All right, so hopefully I'm getting a little bit better at this. I'm trying. It's a work in progress as far as recording these lectures, but the next thing that we need to cover is that when we talk about bacteria, so now we're actually in section 20.3, bacteria, just bacteria, even though, just a reminder, the prokaryotes include bacteria and archaea, but we're going to focus mostly on the bacteria. I will mention archaea briefly, but we're going to focus more on the bacteria. I'm going to try something. Better? Yeah, that gives me even room up there. Okay, sorry. Again, work in progress. So let's start by talking about the different there's really like 4 different groups that you can put the bacteria in based on how they obtain energy and how they obtain food. So I know you know that there are photosynthetic organisms that obtain energy from sunlight, and they make their own food by converting carbon dioxide into glucose or other carbohydrates. So bacteria, there are some photosynthetic bacteria as well. There are some heterotrophic bacteria like humans that consume their food, consume their carbohydrates, so they get energy and their carbon source from the food that they eat. But let's talk about the bacteria that are classified as photoautotrophs. So what this tells us, I notice I misspelled. Okay, what this tells us is that photo means that the bacteria obtain their energy from sunlight. Autotroph means they make their own food by converting carbon dioxide into carbohydrate. So their energy comes from sunlight, and they convert carbon dioxide into food in the form of carbohydrates. Now, the photoautotrophs do carry out photosynthesis, but the ones that actually carry out true photosynthesis, meaning that they produce oxygen gas, are the cyanobacteria. We call them oxygenic because they do carry out true photosynthesis and they produce oxygen gas as a waste product. And so those are called cyanobacteria. Then we have some that are anoxygenic. So they still carry out a type of photosynthesis, but they don't produce oxygen as a byproduct. And these bacteria are the green and purple sulfur bacteria. Okay? The green and purple sulfur bacteria are still getting their energy from sunlight. They're still making their own food. They just don't produce oxygen as a byproduct, as the cyanobacteria do. Then we have some bacteria that are classified as chemoautotrophs. That means their energy comes from chemo or chemicals instead of sunlight. Some of the chemicals that they would get their energy from, some of them can break down hydrogen gas or ammonia. These substances are toxic to most living things, but these particular bacteria use these substances for energy. Another one is hydrogen sulfide. So these are chemicals that they get their energy from instead of sunlight, but they still are autotrophs, and that means that they convert carbon dioxide into food in the form of carbohydrates. All right, so we just talked about photoautotrophs and chemoautotrophs. Now we have photoheterotrophs and chemoheterotrophs. Remember that a heterotroph has to consume its food. So a photoheterotroph is a little bit of a rare type of thing, but it gets its energy from sunlight. However, instead of making its own food, it consumes its food in the form of carbohydrates. And the examples of bacteria that are photoheterotrophs are purple and green non-sulfur bacteria. And just to let you know, you're not going to read about photoheterotrophs in your textbook. Your e-text did not mention them, but they exist, and I wanted to, since you had examples of the other three nutritional types, you know, metabolic types, I wanted to make sure that you had an example of photoheterotrophs or knew that there are photoheterotrophic bacteria. Then we have chemoheterotrophs, which get their energy and their carbon source both the same way we do. They consume organic nutrients or food. Usually that takes the form of carbohydrates. So they break down carbohydrates for energy, and carbohydrates are also their food. So their energy and their carbon source comes from the food that they eat. And most bacteria are chemoheterotrophs. So the last thing that I want to talk to you about before I move on and show you some slides is that, excuse me, the chemoheterotrophs can, there's really three different types of chemoheterotrophs, and I'm going to see if I can just write up here. So a chemoheterotroph can be aerobic, or it can be anaerobic. Aerobic means that it lives off of oxygen. It breathes, or it doesn't really breathe, but it consumes oxygen. And anaerobic means that it does not. So, give me a second. So most bacteria are aerobic bacteria. That means that they live in an environment that provides them with oxygen, and they use the oxygen to carry out cellular respiration. Okay? So that's like us. Then we have bacteria that are called facultative anaerobes. Some are facultative anaerobes. The facultative anaerobes, what that means is that they can survive in an environment that has oxygen, or they can survive in an environment that doesn't have oxygen. So an example of facultative anaerobes living in our intestines are E. coli bacteria. E. coli bacteria live in our intestines, and what they do is they actually, because they can live in an environment that has oxygen or an environment that doesn't, they will actually use up all the oxygen in our intestines so that other bacteria that we need to make vitamins for us, these other bacteria can have a no oxygen environment. So some bacteria are facultative anaerobes, meaning they can survive in oxygen, in the presence of oxygen or the absence of oxygen. But then we have some obligate anaerobes. That means they will die in the presence of oxygen. Oxygen kills them. So some are obligate, meaning they must live in an environment that is anaerobic, no oxygen. And those bacteria are able to live in our small intestines because of the E. coli, that use up all the oxygen so that now the environment has no oxygen in it. And these bacteria produce vitamins like vitamin K and vitamin B12. Okay, so they produce, there's a glare, but I think you can see that. This says that some of the bacteria are obligate anaerobes, and they produce vitamins in our intestines. They produce the vitamins K and vitamin B12. And they are able to live in an anaerobic environment because the E. coli actually create the anaerobic environment by using up the oxygen. And this is actually an example of a symbiotic relationship. The E. coli and the intestinal obligate anaerobes in our intestines, they have a symbiotic relationship, which we'll talk about in just a second. All right, so this is the last topic that I'm going to show you on the board and give you notes for, and that is that bacteria can form symbiotic relationships with each other and also with other organisms. So we're going to talk about commensalism first. Commensalism is a symbiotic relationship where one organism benefits, the other is not affected. It's not hurt, but it's also doesn't benefit in any way. And the example that we just went over, E. coli that live in our intestines and the obligate anaerobic bacteria that produce vitamins for us that also live in our intestines, they have a commensalism or commensalistic relationship. The E. coli create the anaerobic environment. They use up all the oxygen so that the vitamin-producing bacteria can survive, because if there was oxygen present, they would die. So the obligate anaerobes benefit. The E. coli really aren't benefited or harmed by the relationship. That's just how they naturally live. And so they're unaffected by the obligate anaerobes. But if you look at mutualism, which is where both organisms benefit, a good example of that would be E. coli and humans, because E. coli live in our gut and they benefit us by helping to create an environment where other bacteria can make vitamins for us. And then they are benefited as well because they are being given a source of food and shelter. Then we've got parasitism, which are pathogenic bacteria. So, so that's going to be it. I'm going to do one more recording where I show some of the slides.